you for returning from that.
Actually, I think turn it over to Jim because then he has some, address some of the questions that I had, but given the opportunity to.
We have a witness yet to call.
Okay.
So we would begin with that.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Very good.
So once you're done with your stuff, there's some administrative things before I ask some questions. I just want to make sure that it's clear. Just make sure you're agreeing with
Cover those whenever you'd like, now or wait.
the only thing I was going to talk about, so we've got a myriad of exhibits.
Yeah.
I was just going to designate from the very first meeting in April of 2025, there's a list of the exhibits related to notices and things like that. So I was just, for purposes of the record, just going to designate those exhibit ZO for zoning office exhibits.
There's no objection to that, and I did receive copies of that evening from you.
And then for yours, I don't know how you want to designate it, because they're 1 through 18, so I didn't know how you want to, we could do a PowerCo or a T or.
Yeah, whatever is convenient for the board's reference and for the staff.
And then I was going to do anything that I'm writing the letters as BZA dash A through whatever.
Well, I guess it would make sense for consistency to consider the tower code documents, TCO through 1 through 18.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then at the chairman's suggestion, what I started doing was then referencing the Bates scale numbers of the fully paginated copy of the application. A little bit of confusion on the TCO 1 through 18, but then I tried to cure that. So for instance, tonight, the document I'll be referencing is one of the Bates numbers and not anything new or different.
And that's the second packet that I'm going to make it part of the administrative. So there'll be an additional ZO exhibit. So,
Again, no problem with that.
right. That's all I had on the administrative.
Okay, well, very good. All right, Mr. Chairman, you want me to proceed?
Sure.
All right, just for the record, I know Lisa prefers it. It's Jim Matthews, 400 South Main Street, North Canton, Ohio, 44720. Again, I entered my appearance way back. I'm one of the lawyers for Tower Code. Appreciate your consideration tonight. The chairman's identified the matters that are in front of you. Variance request couple. Conditional use permit. The remaining witness this evening, I'll call is Kurt Boulain. Kurt, if you want to stand, the court reporter will probably give you an oath of affirmation.
Please raise your right hand. I swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Very well, thank you. All right, with that brief introduction, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself a little more fully to the board, state your name and your business address to begin. And you don't have to stay. Does he have to stay in? No. You can stop.
I will swear. Kurt Boulain, and my address is 7575 Commerce Court, Lewis Center, Ohio, 43035.
Kurt, are you currently employed?
Yes, sir.
And who do you employ with?
Verizon Wireless,
And how long have you been employed with Verizon?
35.5 years.
What was your current job title?
Senior RF engineer.
And if you could just give the board a bit of a chronology over the 35 and a half years, what job titles and duties and responsibilities you had at Verizon.
I've basically done the same job for 35 and a half years. I planned towers in the Central Ohio, Cincinnati area, Dayton area, Eastern Ohio, Mansfield area, Northwest Ohio, some. I've also done in-building work, also small cell work. In-building being you go into a structure and RF coverage inside, small cell coverage, outdoor DAS coverage, macros, which are large towers that cover a larger area.
Would you please tell the board what your educational background is for that position?
Bachelor of Science degree, a 4-year degree from John Brown University.
And is that an engineering degree?
Yes, engineering.
You mentioned in response to one of my questions that you are the senior RF engineer and that you've been involved in RF engineering for roughly 35 and a half years. If you could just give them a little more background into what it is we're talking about when you're speaking to RF.
RF waves are all around us, right? Your phone talks to a tower with RF. Your computer on Wi-Fi talks to a router through RF. It's invisible radio frequency wave that transmit from one place to another, A to B, and it basically transmits data. FM stations transmit voice, well, before they went to digital. Now they transmit digits that are transcribed into audio. So all that is RF.
And what's the interplay, if you will, in this RF, the radio frequencies, and the functionality of cell towers?
Each RF tower or each base station has an RF on it that transmits to the mobile, and that mobile transmits back on RF. That's how they communicate.
Are you familiar with the Berlin Station Verizon site and tower installation?
Yes.
And could you tell the board just a little bit of the information that you utilized in familiarizing yourself with that tower?
Yes, the person that put this package together, Virgil, was laid off, so I'm stepping in for him. But based on this package, yes, I have reviewed this site.
Have you seen the location?
Yes, I drove by it last week before the meeting.
And the board's already heard some testimony about the location, the site, and what's been developed. Just so that we're all clear on what you're testifying about, you're testifying about the tower that's constructed out on the middle school property.
Yes.
And it consists of a tower, a monopole tower with its antenna.
Yes.
And is there also then support infrastructure for the utilities as well as the operational equipment for the antenna?
Yes, there's power and there's also interconnect, the fiber that connects that to what we call a switch or a control center that allows that tower to talk to other towers and allows it to communicate with the network.
Okay. And then to kind of complete a rough description of the site, there's also the fencing around it for security, pretty standard for a tower such as this.
Yes, we don't want people accessing the tower unless they're authorized.
And from your familiarity, you understand that this particular site is operational?
Yes,
And by that I mean that the antenna that's operated by Verizon has already been activated and is on air.
yes,
So it is functioning, if you will, in this. You mentioned briefly the RF, the radio frequency transmission. It's actually serving those functions.
yes.
Now, as a result of that, which I would characterize as a kind of unique circumstance, is there actual data about the operation of the tower?
Yes, and the package that we provided, it provides information on the calls, the amount of calls that can be transmitted, and also the capacity of the tower.
Okay. What you're referring to is something I asked for you to look at, which was the report. It's captioned Berlin Station Macro Cell, dated December of 2024, beginning at Tower Code 33 through Tower Code 42. Is that what you've looked at?
Yes.
And if you could just kind of recap from that report, what, if any, significance is the data about the addition of capacity or coverage on this particular site?
Well, it provides needed capacity and coverage for this area. And it also offloaded adjacent towers in the area so that they could be able to communicate better with the mobiles that are closer to them.
And in the information that was collected by your, former or other colleague at Verizon, he has some numbers that are stated here at Tower Code 40. If you could refer to that page. I'm going to walk you through some of this information, and I believe there is a corresponding reference to a couple of figures. Feel free to look at those as need be. There's the comment in this report about before the existence of the Berlin station site, the service capacity in the area was inadequate because of surrounding sites being overloaded. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
And generally speaking, we're just trying to get across to the board what this means. What is a lack of service capacity?
What happens is the phone is not able to communicate with the tower like it should. It's an overload situation. It's like a cup you pour too much water into, it just spills over. So it creates a system overload. You might say that the net effect is the quality of service goes down when you get overloaded.
Does that affect also the coverage area of the particular service?
Typically, yes, you're going to lose coverage. The nobles that are closer will get service. The ones on the edge would tend to get kicked off or have less service.
There are references here to figures 4 and 5 of this report. If you could take a look at those. There are references on figures 4 and 5 to the Berlin Station macro cell tower and a description of the coverage before the deployment of the tower and then the offload area included with the existence of the tower. Can you just give a little bit of more detail of what this depicts?
Yes, the area that's the red coverage, in case you guys will have this soon. The red coverage area is existing, and the green coverage area is the Berlin Station site with it being turned on and what it covers. Shows you how much capacity and coverage that we gain from having that site.
Is the green footprint, if you will, of the one figure meant to project or describe from the data that's been developed from the tower the enhanced coverage from the tower?
Yes.
And does it in the same light also demonstrate the enhanced capacity for call load and data load with the addition of this tower?
Yes.
Continuing on with the next page, which is Tower Code 40, there are the comments in the report that state that the inclusion of this macro site provides a stronger signal and more capacity. And again, it's within the green area that's depicted in one of the figures. And that traffic is now being handled by the Berlin Station macro tower instead of overloading other towers that may be in the vicinity. Is that still accurate information from Verizon's data?
Yes.
In the next few comments here, the Berlin Station site has allowed for an additional 500,000 connections per day in this area. Is that also accurate based upon Verizon's data?
Yes, that's again throughout the whole day.
Okay. And the notation in the report here was that that was an increase just in that addition of service capacity of 18%.
Yes.
The other remaining comment in that paragraph is that without this site, the surrounding macro network would not have independently the capacity to accommodate the addition of those calls. Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons this tower was explored, the gap that was existing, and the process to get to this enhancement. But in addition to the augmentation of the coverage and the capacity, are there any new or additional services that are available as a result of including this macro site into Verizon's network?
Yes, one of the things that we've been using is our home internet service, something that you can purchase and you can put in your window if you qualify, and you're able to use spectrum-like speeds at your house.
Obviously a service that's offered by Verizon and a service that's being promoted by Verizon.
Oh, yes, yes.
In furthering on this report, page 40, there's the notation that the addition of this site also provides an additional 50,000 megabytes of download volume in the area, critical to providing adequate service for Verizon's customers. Is that also to, in part, allow for this home internet addition of service?
Yes.
And how would you characterize the addition of 50,000 megabytes of download capacity based upon this tower?
Qualified?
Well, is it significant? Is it
Yes.
critical to be able to operate that service, provide that service?
Yes, without that ability to provide that download, we would not be able to put in the home internet type service, as well as our other data services.
Again, in this particular circumstance, I've described it as unique. I think it is indeed unique to have actual data on the operational capacity of the tower. Could you tell the board, though, the impact on the service area from a capacity standpoint and from a coverage standpoint if this tower were ordered to be turned off or removed?
It would be a significant network reduction in quality of service. Typically, our networks work together. When you would lose a piece like this, the adjacent sites would have to pick up the slack. And I do have some anecdotal evidence from at least one person that used to work at Verizon that lives in the area. They said that it definitely improved their experience. So to not have it would revert back to their previously poor experience.
And with that background, then let's get into a little bit of an additional description as to the reason for constructing the tower. Are you generally familiar, I'm assuming you are, with 35 and a half years of experience, of what goes into the determination of whether or not to look at a new build or an additional site?
Yeah, it's basically need. We have what we call a service gap fill-in for coverage and or capacity because they go together. You need both coverage and capacity for a site. If you put in a site without capacity, you can't make calls. You put in a site with a bunch of capacity, but it doesn't have coverage, it doesn't work either. So you need both, they go hand in hand. So you look for basically a place, a location that you can get that can offload. We call that typically a search ring. So we search, draw an area on a map, and this is the optimal location. And we see if we can, then we see if our real estate team can find a site in that area.
Let's talk a little bit about the mapping, if you will, of any deficiencies in coverage or service capacity. Is that done through the RF data that you develop on your system?
There's different methods that we use. We have customer data. Our customers are talking to us, so we try to listen to them. We see where their devices are dropping. We can see that. We can see where their devices are slower, so we can tell where they're at the edge. That's one way. And then we also look at capacity data on adjacent towers, the sectors that are overloaded. So we try to offload those. A sector is a piece of a tower. Sorry, I should be clear on that. Typically we have 3 sectors on a tower. So we try to offload the sectors that are at or over capacity.
If you would take a look at Tower Code 36, the page in this document. Sorry, no problem.
Okay.
Is this what is typically referred to as an RF map?
Yes, this page is an RF coverage map for the frequencies that we call AWS. It's Advanced Wireless Service. It was a spectrum that we purchased a long time ago, like 20 years ago. But it's originally we had 850, now we're PCS, now it's in AWS, and then CBN. Right, doesn't mean a lot to you guys, but it's kind of the backbone carrier that we tend to plan with for capacity.
And is this the type of map, if you will, that's drawn or depicted based upon the information that you told us about, customer data as well as your capacity data?
Well, this would be a coverage map, so it would be based on, coverage need.
And this particular map on page 36 is marked AWS service area before the build of the Berlin Station macro site, correct?
Correct.
What, if any, gap in coverage does this depict from an RF standpoint?
The areas in green are what we would currently cover with AWS, and the areas that don't show green are areas that do not have that AWS carrier.
And would it be fair to characterize the areas that do not have the coverage depicted, that that's a significant gap in coverage based upon that geographic area that's covered?
Yes.
Then the next page, page 37, has the notation of AWS coverage after the build and operation of the Berlin macro site. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is this similarly an RF map that depicts the actual operation of the tower?
Yes, it's modeling the actual operation.
And I mean, one can compare, if you will, by flipping back and forth from 36 to 37. Is it fair to say that Exhibit 37 demonstrates that with this tower being turned on and operational, a significant gap in coverage is filled?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that in addition to doing the RF mapping to identify need, I think was your word, that part of the analysis is in identifying a search ring. And what, if anything, is the function of the search ring?
It gives our real estate team an area to go look at. You can't just say, hey, go find a site, because then they would bring you the easiest site they can find, not the site you need.
Gotcha.
Which is the search ring, is the site you need.
And in this particular document, Tower Code 34 would be the page that I believe identified the search ring for this particular gap in coverage.
Yes.
And if I understand the legend correctly, the search ring that was identified was a half-mile radius, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, is significant about having a radius to a search ring in trying to develop a site that will in fact fill a gap?
You want to get a site that is within the area that will best serve the service gap, the coverage gap or service gap. And that's what the search ring does.
I take it then if you were to move outside of the search ring, you kind of defeat the entire purpose of seeking to fill the gap?
Yes.
This particular map shows, I believe, that the location of the tower as built on the school site is in fact within the search ring. Is that correct? That's
Yes.
depicted there. Flipping to the next page, I gather from this page, page 35, that in addition to looking for a suitable site, there is also an effort as part of the consideration of a new build to see if there's anything existing that can be utilized instead of a build.
Instead of a new build? Yes.
If you could just describe that to the board a little bit. What type of installations would you be looking for?
Typically, we're looking for existing communication towers. Those tend to work the best. As far as they already have utilities, they would already have power and fiber or interconnectivity, and that makes the cost a lot lower. And you also have an existing tower, so you don't have to go through the zoning typically to go on that tower, and it's just a lot easier for everybody to look at one tower.
The summaries that were placed in this report indicate that there were no other existing towers or structures that were technically and economically feasible to look at locating an additional antenna to augment the service. Is that accurate from Verizon's data?
Yes.
And similarly, there was a tower identified 1.75 miles from the search ring, and due to that distance, that was, if you will, ruled out as a suitable location to place an additional antenna.
Correct.
Again, it's all about trying to fill the gap that's identified, and nothing was identified as serving that purpose within the search ring. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that is still correct from Verizon's data.
Yes.
We've talked a little bit about the identification, what Verizon goes through to identify a need and whether or not there's a significant gap that needs to be addressed to deal with coverage as well as capacity issues. You've talked a little bit about the mechanics of going through the process of identifying a search ring, seeing if there's anything in that location to utilize to augment the service. Is there then other engineering that goes into what the tower or the structure would look like in order to fill the gap? The need, for instance, height differentiation,
Oh, yeah.
whether or not you're looking at down the road to have opportunities for co-location, those types of things.
Right. You do need a certain height, and in this case, 190 foot. Radcenter is what we were looking for this site, and that would allow other people to co-locate on it at the lower height. Typically, we're 10 feet apart. So if you have a 190 tower, you can have co-locators at 180, 170.
Okay. Is it an engineering decision that determines the appropriate height of the tower to fill a gap, such as in this instance?
Yes.
And that's what process I understand that Verizon went through here.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've stated, that's the reason for the height that's necessary on this particular tower.
Yeah, the additional height, the height that we picked was to cover to the north and also to the east, to maximize that coverage.
This may sound simplistic, but what, if any, impact would there be if the tower were shorter, but yet at the same location on the school property?
The shorter tower would reduce coverage to the north and also to the east, so the people that are currently being served would have degradation in their quality of service, in their capacity and coverage. And we would also put more traffic back on those adjacent towers, and again, their capacity and their ability to serve that customer would be degraded too, because the edge is always the problem. That those customers on the edge, those are the ones you're trying to keep and trying to make sure that they're taken care of.
Fair to say, if the tower were reduced in height, it would defeat the original purpose of trying to fill the coverage gap that had been identified.
Correct.
And would also defeat the addition or augmentation of capacity that's gained from this site at 195 feet.
Correct.
Does this tower support co-location?
Yes.
And in fact, there is already one provider who is interested in co-location, is that correct?
I've been told that they're interested, yes.
Okay. I know that and I'm not going to pretend to know all of the changes over the 35 and a half past years, but is it fair to say there's an ever-changing landscape of technology through cellular telecommunication?
Yes, yes.
And is that even true today, that there's always changes and new services that are being offered by telecommunication providers, cell companies?
Yes, I mean, when I started, it was basically car phones or bag phones, if you guys remember that, or the bricks, the big phones. And those were analog, those were voice-only phones. And we went to, texting was big when that happened. Data was big, even though it was quite slow, if you remember dial-up, that kind of speed. Then 3G, 4G, 5G, 5G, and as well as 6G specs being written up right now. 6G is going to be faster. Basically, you're trying to take that RF pipe, you're trying to optimize it as much as you can. get as much through it as you can. And that's what each evolution does.
So if I understood you, this tower not only supports the standard cell telecommunication calls, but also data expansion, 5G you say currently, and 6G is coming. We talked a little bit about the home internet that's available as a result of the construction of this tower and the enhancement to service capacity. What, if any, 911 support is offered by having a tower such as the Berlin Station site?
Yes, the FCC requires all of our sites to have 911. So the better call quality, the better call capacity you have, the better 911 service you have.
Final thing for you, I know that you had to review some data and you had to review Virgil's report and information. Is it fair to say that having done that review, you're comfortable endorsing the conclusions that are expressed in the report?
Yes, Virgil is a good engineer, and I support what he said. Yes.
And that includes his support that the data that's actually come off of this particular tower operation fully supports that it did in fact fill the gap that had been identified.
Yes.
That's all I have.
If you have questions, could you please stand and report?
Sure.
My name is Derek McGrew. I'm here representing, 103 Wilshire Court, Noblesville, Indiana.
So let's.
You want to clarify if he's questioning
So
him?
first of all, yeah, I want to know who's doing what. So just for purposes of the record, Mr. Mobley, you attended the last meeting and were sworn in at that meeting, right?
No, the last meeting, there was no person sworn in.
He took the affirmation tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you are,
Derek McGrew.
okay, and who are you?
I am here representing T-Mobile.
And are you an attorney?
I'm not,
Are you a partner?
I would say I'm a party, yes.
And so I'm going to get some clarification because Mr. Matthews has indicated in writing that T-Mobile is not part of this application. So
I
is
think
that accurate?
well, T-Mobile is not part of the application.
Yeah.
T-Mobile has a separate application.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think he's here to
This
just,
application is not for this board this evening.
well, I don't think the fact that it's here before the board means he can't speak to his positions on it. I think the more-
Appearing as a witness, if he's appearing as a witness, you would call that.
I think the more important clarification is whether he has any questions for the witness right now.
And so that's what, are you an attorney?
I'm not,
So that's my question is, he's not an attorney. He doesn't have an application before this board. You're not calling him as a witness, are you?
Well, if I need to call him as a witness, I will, for him to be able to offer his position before the board. My position is anybody could have appeared tonight and said anything they want.
This is what I'm struggling with. If he's a witness, and he's here on behalf of T-Mobile, what evidence is he providing to the board in relation to the application that is arising in the tower?
He is going to offer whatever comments he wants. He's free to do that. No different than had anybody come in off the street.
we're not hearing public comment at the moment, so
If he wants to offer public comment, he can offer public comment.
that's all I'm seeking.
That'll be fun.
He's not a party, so that's where I get into the questioning witnesses.
I think the only thing that threw us off is the fact that he stood up during this witness's testimony. So he'll be given a different opportunity.
My apologies, I so did.
No, it's
I
not-
want to make sure I have an
I
opportunity.
just want to clarify the role of the various folks.
No problem.
Tonight here.
No problem.
Sorry.
Yeah, no issue. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I didn't know if there's anything else other than, did you want to offer the legal brief now, or do you want to do that later? I mean, I don't.
Well, I guess we're not technically, the record's not closed.
Correct, that's why I didn't know if you want to offer now.
If you have questions, I may have some redirect.
Okay.
I
I will have some questions to him, but he was kind of later from the questions that I had, so I'll probably get back to him.
Yeah, again, whatever process you want to follow on that. So I'm finished questioning him, I'll just reserve any redirect if I need to.
That's fine.
Questions for the witness?
I do, but I kind of want to reserve, because I want to get through some other stuff before I come to his issues. So, what I would like to do is if we can address the exhibits that need to be added to the record. Lisa, I know there's a blue folder in front of you. That has all of the notice related documents that would be up for the prior hearing. And so those need to be added as exhibits. I don't know how you want to document those.
How should we do that?
You can
Can
just,
we read? Do I need to read?
if you want to designate them as a group, that's fine. Just kind of summarize what they are. You can just make them one. I know you went through individually on each one the last time, but I think there's enough of them. Really up to you.
Have they been added to the record yet?
No.
So what exhibit would they be?
We would be starting with ZO 21.
The Z020, and we're gonna make all of them one.
Yeah, all the zoning office notice document. Whatever the next number is.
20, I'm sorry, 021.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last one that I had from April 16th was 21, or it was 20.
So it's 21, okay.
And do you want me to,
I would just summarize and mention.
Okay. So within this exhibit Z021, there's a notice. Oh, let me just back up. There was a notice that was published for this hearing. I didn't see this. Right, okay, there was a notice, even though this was tabled, and I don't think a notice is necessary, I just noticed that.
I would just add that to the back.
To the back, okay, I'll add this, so there's a notice for tonight's hearing, I don't know if you guys have that, but, I'll just put that at the end. Okay, so, let's see, Z021, the first document is the notice of the public hearing, dated December 2nd, or the December 16th hearing. The next document is the agenda, Berlin Township Zoning Appeals agenda, published by the zoning office for the November 5th hearing. The next document, it's a series of names and addresses, which I assume are the people who were notified of this hearing. Correct? Then there is, the next document is the adjacent adjacent property owner letter dated October 20th. And the next one is the notice of the public hearing dated October 20th for the November 5th hearing, published on Facebook and the township website. This is a notice dated September 10th for a September 24th hearing. Did we have a September 24th hearing? Okay, so we did not have this hearing, but there's notices in here. There's another document for the adjacent property owners for the hearing on September 24th that did not occur. And then there's another list of labels with names and addresses, I assume were from the September 24th hearing that did not occur. Looks like there's another copy of the adjacent landowner property notice for the, also the September 24th. This appears to be a duplicate of 2 pages before.
Okay.
Then there is the hearing notice published on the Berlin Township website and Facebook page for the September 24th hearing that did not occur. That was posted on September 10th, 2025. The next page is the sign-in sheet for the hearing that was not held on September 24th, and that is, of course, blank. And there, the next page is, let's see, there are, so some of these are duplicates, is that okay? There's 3 of the same thing? Okay.
These documents were provided by the zoning office.
Okay. The next, there's 3 identical pages, and these are all the agenda that, for the September 24th, 2025 hearing that did not occur. There's 3 of those. The next document appears to be the labels, names, and addresses of the people that were notified of the April 16th, 2025 BZA hearing. The next one is a letter dated July 2nd, 2025 to former, at the time, zoning inspector Levi Kohler, from Chris Reinhardt, from the attorney James Matthews. Copy to Chris Reinhardt. And that's a letter regarding the conditional use permit and with some references to various exhibits. And there's a receipt attached to that dated July 3rd, 2025 for $1,700 received from PowerCo for the BZA variance submittal. And the next document is, there's 2 of them and they are identical, and that's September 10th, 2025. I think actually this is a copy of the earlier one, but I need 2 more copies of the September 10th, 2025 letter that was sent to adjacent property owners for the September 24th hearing that did not occur. And then the last exhibit, or the last part of this exhibit, is the hearing notice for tonight that was published on December 19th, 2025 in the on the township Facebook page and website.
Okay. So that would all be part of exhibit ZO21, and then ZO22 would be that big rubber band document, which is, should be the July 2nd, 2025.
Okay, all of this. So this will be ZO22.
22. You just confirm that is the July, it's July 2nd. Is that right?
Yes, July 2nd.
July 2nd, 2025, correspondence from Mr. Matthews, submitting supplemental application materials related to these applications.
I don't have to read all these, right?
No.
No. Is that it? Just
That's
these
it.
2? Okay.
So, for purposes of that, I think we covered what was needed for purposes of the administration portion of the record. So, Mr. Matthews, I don't know, I had certain questions regarding the application itself, unrelated to Verizon, so I didn't know if you're going to answer those questions or if there's a witness that is available to answer those questions.
Depends what they are.
Okay.
I don't know that Carrie is on.
Were you able to get Carrie the link?
I believe so.
You will send. Did you get it? I mean, I sent it, so I haven't heard back tonight.
Okay, I'll just proceed. Oh, hello? Okay, so for purposes of clarification of the record, I just want, so we currently have a cell tower that is in place at 2502 Black Road, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. When was that tower constructed?
The building permit was January 10, 2022. I believe tower construction began in March and was completed April 2 of 2022.
Okay, and so at the time that the tower was constructed, the property that, where it's located, is zoned residential, correct?
I think it's one of the residential classifications, whatever was identified. I think you have multiple residential classes.
Okay.
I can probably find that. This is a farm residential, is what it's classified as.
Okay. And so is it the applicant's understanding that at the time that the tower was constructed, they needed zoning approval for purposes of construction of that tower?
No, and we've been well down this path of dealing with the scope of state law immunity from zoning, but we're not here to litigate that issue by all means.
But you're not, the applicant is not serving immunity as part of these applications, correct?
No, the purpose of this application is to submit to the board's jurisdiction the request for the conditional use permit under the one section, and then the other BZA section, the two variances for height and property line setback. So we are submitting that naturally by the submission of the application to the board's jurisdiction on that.
But I just want to make sure the board has an accurate understanding of the history of this, because we talked about some of the history. So is it accurate that prior to the construction of the tower, Tower Code did submit a notice of an intent to construct the telecommunications tower pursuant to Ohio state law to Garland Township?
That is accurate, that was done.
Okay, so, and the purpose for doing so is to determine whether zoning authority would apply through the township, or if the procedure was not complied with, then it would be exempt under Ohio law. Is that correct?
That's what that process is for, and I believe there was an objection.
And that's what I was getting to. So there was an objection raised either by a resident or a township trustee. There was
a trustee.
And there was a notice that was sent from Berlin Township to Tower Code indicating that they needed to proceed with obtaining the conditional use permit, correct?
It's also accurate, that's the record.
And then at some time after that, a determination was made by Tower Code that they believed they were immune from such zoning regulation.
Also correct.
And that led to not only the obtaining of a building permit, the construction of a tower, an issuance of a notice of violation by the township, or a notice to certain folks that this tower was being constructed or was constructed in violation of the zoning resolution, which led to various state and federal litigation between the township and Tower Code. Is that accurate?
There has been litigation of those issues, that's right.
Okay, and as of today, Tower Code does not have a conditional use permit for the operation of that tower.
It does not.
Is the state litigation still pending?
I believe it is.
Okay. Was there an agreement between Tower Code and,
That issue's been litigated. I'm not going to try to characterize it or paraphrase it.
what I'm getting to is to the jurisdiction of the board.
Oh, on that feature.
So
I would not be here for my third or however much amount of time.
Again, I'm just kind of laying the land for some of the documents that I previously put into the record. I just want to make sure you're kind of in agreement as to kind of what's led up to this.
And that may well go to trying, without getting into all the details,
Correct.
explaining to the board why it's got jurisdiction to consider these applications and it's a tower that's built.
So separate and apart from the Ohio Revised Code by 1911, as part of the state litigation, there was an agreement between the township and Tower Code to kind of put a status quo issue in 20, I believe it was 2022, to maintain the status quo, not complete construction and all of that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into that. The things that are tangential or collateral to the jurisdiction of this board, I'm not going to try to
Well,
characterize. I'm not gonna try to relitigate, I'm not gonna have my words shoved back at me in any state, in any case. Trying to sit here at 8:30 at night and try to characterize agreements as a yes or a no, I'm not going to do it. The board has jurisdiction, we've agreed to consider matters that fall under its authority, not only under state law, but under its provisions of the code, and that's it.
Okay. You indicated that, or the application indicates that they obtained a building permit from Delaware County. Do you know what the position of Delaware County is with respect to that building permit?
I know the building permit's still out there. There may be some letters either from the building department or the prosecutor that
Yeah.
stated an objection to it.
Okay.
Has no impact whatsoever on the building permit.
We'll come back to that. Has Towerco obtained a certificate of completion from the building department with respect to the building permit that's been issued?
For the as-built, I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Do you know if anyone does?
Do I know if anybody knows?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Do you know where the building permit that has been made a part of the zoning application has expired?
A building permit will expire if there's no construction within 12 months or there's no application for an extension. Neither of those rules are applicable here because the tower was built within the time frame of the permit.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. So, as you sit here today, do you know whether the building permit has expired or not?
The building permit would not have expired because there was a project built into the permit. A permit will expire if there's no substantial movement on construction. And there's a process in the code that allows for extensions.
And that's what I'm getting at. Do you know whether that process is?
There would not have been a need for extensions because there was never an expiration with the construction of the tower.
And so that goes to do you know what a certificate of completion is with respect to Delaware County?
There are different sign-offs, if you will, by different building officials. Particulars down here, I'm not sure.
Okay. So as you sit here today, do you know whether a certificate of completion has been issued or not?
I don't know if there was ever an analysis of the as-built, that's true. And typically that certificate is to demonstrate the as-built was as permitted without a substantial deviation.
And I know we covered this before, but I just want to make clear that we are in agreement that T-Mobile is not a part of the conditional use permit.
T-Mobile is not an application to this application, which is.
I understand they may have a separate application forthcoming, but it's for purposes of tonight, they are not part of this. Conditional use permit application.
T-Mobile has its own issues, that's true. And they are related by all means, because the effort is to co-locate for telecommunication services on an existing tower.
So when I was looking through both the original application and the supplemental application, there's a little bit of discrepancy about the number of antenna to be located upon the proposed tower. So in the initial application in both the building code and the analyses, some of the engineering analyses that were associated with that, it only shows 3 co-locations on the tower. And then I think in the supplemental materials, there's 4 co-locations. And so what I wanted to make clear is what exactly is the applicant requesting? That's the first part.
First of all, the conditional use permit would be for verifying deployment authority to operate this tower, which is a monopole tower with Verizon's equipment on it.
Okay.
probably has a 3-post antenna of its own, right? It's its own antenna. I think
That's what I'm getting. It shows locations on the initial application for 3 antenna locations. But then on the most recent, on the supplemental, it looks like it's changed to 4 potential antenna
I
locations.
should tell you from familiarity, generally it would be 4 total. The antenna that's the lead and then the 3 co-locations. If you're telling me there is some depiction of 4 co-locations, it may well be to demonstrate the availability or placement of structures. Space can be leased for 911 operations or other non-cell necessarily communications. That may be what the 4th is for. Some communities will want that capability of the antenna to have the additional service space available on the antenna. The owner may want that space for some reason.
Apparently Carrie is thinking to log on, so
She's a,
I don't know if you can hear me. I got kicked off a couple times.
Need to mute her mic.
Make sure that it's muted when it's not speaking. I feel like someone's not muted.
yeah, if anyone is listening or participating, if you can mute your mics, who's not actually participating, for feedback and related purposes.
For assisting you with your questions, it may be appropriate if Carrie can listen to these things and anything
Yeah,
that she can
that's-
add for my information.
So to verify she can hear, you have a way to text her, anybody have a way to text her, make sure you can hear. I've only done it with 1 person on before.
I can try to call.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm on.
Oh, okay. Good. Perfect.
Yeah, so. So what I was getting at, if you look at the tower 32 in the supplemental materials, there's 4 antenna locations.
Okay.
And then if you look back into the building permit area. If you look at Tower Code 68, part of the report produced by Sabre Industries, which is next to the building permit, it shows 3 antenna locations. And the reason why I'm asking,
You're correct. There was a 3-year gap between the building permit that we got in 2022 and when we resubmitted in 2024. It may have been an oversight, or it may have been just TowerCo saying, hey, we'll give an extra space on the tower. I don't think it's really relevant to the conditional use permit. If we need to go back and get a building permit for an extra rad, we would do that.
Let me ask the witness to identify yourself.
could you please identify yourself for purposes of the record and then indicate whether you were sworn in, because I don't think you were here.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My name is Carrie Fazzolari. I'm from TowerCo. My office address is 5000 Valley Stone Drive in Cary, North Carolina.
And then you were, were you previously sworn in at the last hearing?
I don't think anybody was sworn in at the last one because we didn't have a court
Then
reporter.
we need to have you sworn in.
I was sworn in the original.
on November 5th.
I think I would prefer to have you sworn in again. To
Okay.
make sure that we have an accurate reflection of that, so. And Mr. Arcuri, if you can hear me, I know you need to be sworn in as well. So,
Oh.
if you just second to swear both of these witnesses in.
See, Jerry, if you would please raise your right hand.
I'm raising it, I promise.
All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Basilari, is it Basilari or Basilari? I'll make sure I pronounce it.
It rhymes. My parents are jokesters, so Terry Fazzolari.
So if you want to repeat what you just said, just now that you're under oath, we were talking a
Sure,
little bit about the difference in the number of antennas to be on the tower.
Yeah, the original zoning drawings that we did were from 2021. We did it for 3 future antennas, or 3 antennas, Verizon plus 2 others. And then subsequently it's designed for 4 carriers. So either way, it's going to fulfill and be structurally sound for 4 carriers. But in 2024, we must have had an oversight, or we said, let's just make it for 4 carriers. But I don't think it's relevant to the conditional use permit at this point. I think that once we get carriers to come on, like T-Mobile, who's chomping at the bit, we'll have to go through a separate building permit process for them anyway.
Well, functionally, it is relevant to the conditional use permit, because number one, the information was included as part of the application for the conditional use permit. So we've got a difference in documents that's been submitted. The reason I raised the question is because as part of the building permit, I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that you've included the reports from Delta Oaks and Sabre Industries and whatnot as a means to demonstrate that the proposed tower will have structural integrity from both a construction standpoint and a wind resistance standpoint to accommodate at least the 3 co-location antenna spots that are on the proposed tower in those documents. Would that be an accurate summary of why you would include those documents? And just for the zoning resolution reference, 6.04 C1 C1C says that as part of the application, there should be a written certification from a professional engineer stipulating that the tower's design is structurally sound and in compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local building codes.
You have that.
What's that?
You have that information.
But that's what I'm asking. So the original information from the structural engineers is based upon as I understand, the 3 antenna locations. So my question then becomes, are we seeking 3, tower for 3, or a tower for 4 locations? So then the next question is then going to be, do we have a certification related to a 4 location tower with the backup, with the structural engineering analyses and things like that? That's what I was getting at.
Apparently, she explained when the application was made to comply with C3, there was a statement as to the number of antennas capable of being accommodated.
Right. So
I don't
the design appears to be for 3.
I don't see any inconsistency. There's the structural soundness documented separately, and there needed to be a statement as to the number of antennas capable of being accommodated.
Right.
So 4 are being stated as being capable of being accommodated. Would that separately and independently at a later point in time pass county or other structural requirements? That would be for a later day.
I guess I could put it another way. Do we have a written certification from a professional engineer stipulating that the tower's design, including 4 antenna location, is structurally sound and in compliance with the applicable federal, state, and local building codes? If we do, can you please sign me in the record where it is?
Here's what's funny about it. You know that wouldn't exist in the record in light of the 2 things you pointed out. So if the contemplation is to deny the construction of this tower based upon that inconsistency, for the record, I will tell you, we will fully accept a conditional use that authorizes the accommodation of 3 total antenna arrays on this tower.
And the reason why I'm asking that question is because it goes to what a maximum height is. So that's what I'm just trying to make sure that we are clarifying for purposes of the decision that the board is being asked to make. What exactly is it that TowerCo is requesting? Because we need to know for purposes of a variance in height, and we need to know for purposes of the conditional use permit, and then separately, we've got other issues with respect to the variance request for setback. But
Okay, well, on height, it's our position that the record of evidence is quite clear in multiple formats. But the height is necessary from an engineering standpoint to, in fact, fill the significant gap in coverage that was identified. Lowering the height would not accommodate the need of Verizon as the anchor, if you will, antenna array. It would diminish filling the capacity, diminish filling the coverage gap and also reduce capacity. My position on height, and I'll go ahead and start calculating if I need to as well, is that a code that simply provides an arbitrary height maximum is just that. It's entirely arbitrary. Why not just pick 120 feet for the maximum height for towers, or 130 feet? It's completely arbitrary because the height of the tower is dictated by its need and the purpose it serves in being incorporated into a system of interconnected towers. Now, if your position that somehow this differentiation between array impacts the height, my position is it does not at all. If we were only looking at 195 feet operational tower with 1 antenna array on it, that's still necessary to fill Verizon's gap. That was the reason for building the tower. Co-location may be simply a function of the Spectrum Act and adding additional antenna down the road, entirely different standard from a legal perspective. But for purposes of looking at your code and trying to reasonably accommodate it, I am telling you that if the board wants to limit currently, because of the structural report, co-location to a total of 3 antenna array, that is acceptable.
yeah, I'm just, to clarify things that I noticed when I reviewed the application. So, the board is certainly willing to do with this information, whatever they choose to do. So as it relates to issues related to structural integrity, the other question that I had was that there was information related to the tornado that came through, and I cannot remember the exact date when the tornado came through, but some of the justification for structural integrities and the arguments was that it survived the tornado or other lattice towers nearby fell. Is that accurate, that there's information in the application related to that?
It just so happens that there is that circumstantial evidence in the record. Will I ever have another circumstance like that? Probably not.
Okay.
But you know better than I that a tornado came through here, and we know from the photographs that the antenna did not suffer any harm.
So the question that I have is did TowerCo engage in any post-tornado review, analysis, or any other examination of that tower to confirm and reaffirm its structural integrity?
Not aware of.
Ms. Montanari?
Tower Co. Makes sure that there is somebody that goes there at least twice a month to go and see of any damage to test it. We didn't do a specification calc, but we go to review it and make sure that everything is in working order.
So to that end, was that review performed by a structural engineer?
There was no reason for it to be performed by a structural engineer.
So what I'm hearing then is that after the tornado passed through, there's been no post-storm review by a structural engineer engaged by TowerCo or anyone else to review the structural integrity of the existing tower.
I am not, I'm not sure why this question is relevant, but that's beyond the thing. But I cannot answer a question about engineering. I can just tell you what our policy is that when we go to those sites to make sure that they're in working order.
Great.
And we didn't have any reason.
Okay. So who is the owner of the property where the proposed tower is located? Whoever wants to answer that question.
So, I'll get it right, Olentangy School District or School Board.
Okay. To anyone's knowledge, did the Olentangy Local School District Board of Education review and approve the application that's been submitted? And I'm asking about the Board of Education. I'm not asking about anyone employed by the Board of Education.
It would have been through my partner, Tanya Rogers, with the board's lawyer.
And who is the board's lawyer?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of that. I can't recall.
Is that Sandy McIntosh?
Sandy.
Okay. But as you say here, you don't know whether the board itself, I'm not.
No idea if the board members individually looked at any part of the application.
Okay. To your knowledge, does the Olentangy Local School District Board of Education have a legally valid lease with Tower?
Yes.
Yes, the reason I'm asking.
It's being paid.
The reason I'm asking that question, as part of the litigation, Berlin Township did raise a legal question with respect to the ground lease between both the Board of Education and TowerCo. Is that accurate?
I do recall an obstacle, if you will, or an issue thrown into it relating to the sufficiency of the original lease. As I recall offhand, it had something to do with an attorney general opinion interpreting when a board may lease surplus or excess property of some fashion for some other purpose than a direct school purpose. To avoid consternation over the issue, there was an amendment to the lease specifically dealing with that by having the board make the necessary findings.
And to that point, the lease amendment is included as part of the supplemental application materials that you submitted in July. Is that correct? So I just want to clarify part of the application materials related to Verizon. In Tower Code 386, this is part of the July 2nd materials. Angela Fry, who is listed as the managing associate general counsel for Verizon, makes a statement in this June 9th, 2025 letter that, in fact, the information provided by Verizon has previously been reviewed and deemed legally sufficient by a federal district court. Do you know what she is referring to in that sentence?
Not sure of the context, so no.
Okay. Do you know if she's referencing the preliminary injunction that was granted by the federal district court in federal litigation?
She may have been, I'm not sure of the context of the timing of her letter. Her letter is June of 25, though. I'm not sure if she's still referencing the district court decision.
And you would agree with me that the preliminary injunction decision that was issued by the federal district court was overturned by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, correct?
Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals determined there was no finality, that's right.
Okay. Do you know whether the Delaware County Department of Building Safety issued certain correspondence indicating that the building permit included as part of the application was mistakenly issued based upon a misrepresentation regarding project zoning and area?
After the fact, there was communication either by somebody at the building department or from the prosecutor's office that I know I responded to unequivocally, making it clear that the statements in those letters were entirely rejected and nonsensical. Most importantly, there was never any effort to rescind, revoke, challenge legally or otherwise the issuance of the building permit. I submit that that's because of the content of my letter pointing out that there was no foundation for any challenge.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Matlack, who is Wayne Matlack? If you know.
It's probably the individual who signed it. I don't know if he's building official or
I'll represent you as the chief building official for Delaware County. Do you know whether he testified in state litigation that it is still their position that it was mistakenly issued?
He may have, and just to be candid, it doesn't matter. He can think everything he wants.
Correct.
The building permit was issued. The building permit was in place when construction was begun and completed. There are a whole host of issues giving rise to some interesting law when that happens. Frankly, it would be too late to challenge the issuance of the building permit by the board, by the building official, by anyone.
So going to the tower itself, and Mr. Bowling, we might be coming to you here shortly. Were multiple locations considered for the proposed telecommunications tower?
Yes, I believe that was Jason Woodward's testimony.
And how many separate locations were evaluated?
You're talking about on-site, on-school site, or other locations?
We can limit it to the school property.
I just know there were a handful. I mean, I can look at this chronology. It doesn't specify the number of locations. I do know that there was an overlap on the school's acquisition of one of these parcels, which played a function. The school had its own internal design operations. It had acquired the site where the relatively new middle school is at.
Yeah.
So that dictated the fact that there's that additional land, looking at how the tower would be integrated into their proposed development. Was it 4? Was it 6? Was it 10 different sites? I don't know, but the school then proposed the location north of the ball fields just to fit with its development plans.
Okay.
And yet still be within the search range so that it worked for Towerco and Verizon.
Who is Jeff Gordon?
Jeff Gordon was probably the school representative working on the project.
Okay. Did he testify in the various litigation?
They may have. I don't remember being part of the deposition.
Okay. Would you have any reason to dispute that he testified that there were 3 locations that he personally reviewed?
If that's his testimony, that's his testimony. And like I said, there was no indication on my chronology of how many sites were considered.
And this could be for Mr. Valenti, I don't know whether you know this or not, but would you have any reason to dispute that he testified that he consulted with Verizon regarding all 3 of those sites, and all 3 of those sites on the school property satisfied their needs?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Do you have any reason to dispute that, Mr. Matthews? I mean, I intend to probably introduce and include the transcripts, but I just wanted to know if you recall off the top of your head.
I do not.
Okay. Is it accurate to say that the location of the existing tower was not chosen by Verizon, but was basically directed by the school district?
Directed by the school board, but deemed acceptable to TowerCo and Verizon as fill in the gap, yeah.
So, Mr. Bolian, I just kind of want to cover some of the background and whatnot. So, and Mr. Matthews is speaking to you as well. So, is it my understanding that Virgil Yapas was the RF engineer for Verizon who performed the analysis and prepared the reports that are included as part of the application?
Yes.
Do you know whether he actually performed those analyses, or did he actually review somebody else's work?
I don't know.
Okay,
We
so-
don't have enough people to sub out that, so I would believe, my guess would be that he did it himself.
Okay, so let me ask you, what did you do to prepare for appearing and testifying here this evening?
I reviewed this document that I don't think anybody's looked at.
Okay.
And I visited the site last week and drove around it, and that's what I did.
And did you review any other documents? Did you talk to anyone? Did you engage in any other activities other than those?
I talked to our attorneys, yes.
But other than that, I don't want to get into potential discussions with attorneys.
That was it.
Did you review any internal data reports of Verizon?
No,
You did not. So the only thing that you reviewed was the document that's included in the application packet.
is this in the application? It is. Yes.
So are you aware that Mr. Yapas testified in both federal and state court?
Yes.
Did you review any of the transcripts associated with that?
No.
You did not. Okay. Why not?
Time, lack thereof.
So it is my understanding that they are from reviewing Mr. Yapas' testimony, that there are 2 frequencies that Verizon utilizes in this area, correct? In the subject area where the tower is located. Is that accurate?
No.
Mr. Yapas testified as to a 700 megahertz frequency band and a 21 megahertz frequency band.
Yes, we have both of those.
And that those were the 2 that were being affected and utilized with respect to the proposed tower.
That is correct. When we plan, that's how we plan, 700 and 2100, that's correct.
And so based upon what I believe Mr. Yapas testified, the 700 megahertz band is this is a layman describing this, it's a more powerful band, but it has a more limited range in terms of capacity and things like that. Is that, I want to make sure I'm trying to describe this accurately.
That's correct.
And so you can have towers at further distance apart, but you may not be able to have as much traffic and volume on on that particular band due to the narrowness of the band.
Correct.
And so separately, the 2100 megahertz is a much broader band that can capture more capacity, carry more volume, but it cannot project as further geographically as the 700 band.
Correct.
And so the purpose for this tower is to, and so if I understand correctly from Mr. Yavis, there's never been a lack of coverage in this area. Is that accurate? Because you've always had the 700 megahertz frequency band in operation.
Well, that would be like saying, originally when I started, we had 850 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 850 megahertz band.
Right.
And if we never added any other customers, yes, that would be fine. But as you add customers, you have to add capacity. So you have to add more spectrum, which is why we added the 700 megahertz spectrum, the PCS spectrum, the AWS spectrum, the C-band spectrum. We added all those spectrums because of users. Yes, you can get away with one band if you have 10 users. We had a lot more users than 10. That's just an example.
So what I'm trying to document though is that just assume the 21 megahertz band doesn't exist at this point, right? At the time that these applications were filed, Verizon Wireless had coverage in this area, the 700 megahertz band. Whether there was sufficient capacity to carry the volume of customers that would be attempting to utilize that band is a separate issue, correct?
You can have coverage, but if your capacity is full, coverage doesn't get you anything.
I think you just answered my question. You had coverage in the area. Whether there was sufficient capacity for customers to use that coverage is the issue that Verizon has been attempting to address.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so was that at any time? I assume this capacity problem is not a 24/7; it's intermittent. So it depends upon the level or volume of traffic at any given time of day.
Yeah, just like roads.
Okay. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, the 700 megahertz band was probably sufficient to service all of the customers in your coverage area.
I don't know the answer to that.
Does Verizon Wireless produce capacity reports?
Internally, sure.
Okay. Does it have data on block calls, block data, all that stuff?
Yes.
Did you provide any of those reports as part of the application?
No.
Why not?
Proprietary.
Okay. Are you aware that the township requested that information be submitted to verify Mr. Yavis's testimony in his report?
No.
To your knowledge, was Verizon ever asked for that by the applicant or anyone else?
Not to my knowledge.
So you indicated that the tower height, so what exactly is the tower height that is being cited? 190? 190. It's going between like 190 and 199. So I did just want to make sure we were accurate about the tower height.
I go by radiation center, which is currently our antenna center line is 190 feet.
Okay, 190 feet. So to your knowledge, so you didn't perform any independent analysis of propagation or whatnot at any tower height, let alone the 190. Is that accurate?
Oh, for this record? No.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was getting at. You didn't do any analysis yourself.
Not for the record. No.
Okay. So you're totally relying on Mr. Yavis and his report and whatnot for your testimony this evening.
Yes.
Do you know whether Mr. Yavis conducted any propagation analyses below 190 feet?
I don't know.
You don't know. If I represented to you that he testified that he did not, do you have any reason to dispute that?
Can you repeat that?
If I represented to you that he testified in various litigation that he did not conduct any propagation analysis below 190 feet, would you have any reason to dispute that?
If that's what he said on the record, then I wouldn't dispute it.
So as you sit here today, you did not testify or provide any documentation to the board that suggests that a tower constructed with a maximum height of either 130 or 145 feet can provide the same or substantially the same coverage as a tower constructed to 190 feet.
I'm not prepared for that now.
Okay. We've been going about an hour and a half. Take a 5-minute break.
That would be great. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, if you'd like to continue?
Mr. Manager, I just want to confirm that Exhibit 18 is this document here. Is that the same report that was provided as part of the expert report for Dallas?
Yes. And at the earlier hearing, I didn't know the Bates number or whatever number.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I thought it was, but I just wanted to make sure that that's where I saw it before.
You're exactly right.
Okay. So at this point, I think I would like to bring on Mr. Arcuri. Ask him some questions. Mr. Arcuri,
Do you want me to rest, or do you want to have the applicant close?
that's up to you. I mean, I don't mind.
As I understand we've elevated some formality here, as I understand it. I directed some questions to the Verizon witness this evening. You had some questions for him, which is cross, which is fine. Based on that, I don't have any other questions for him.
Okay.
I don't have any other witnesses to call.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's not formal litigation hearing, but we can kind of put it that way.
It's not, and I had commented earlier, we're not here with rules of evidence and strict production requirements. We added a little bit of that, which is fine. I can accept a little bit of it, and I may add some of my own. So just to make the record a little clearer from my standpoint, we have submitted all of our application materials, offer those for the board's consideration. That includes that supplemental package, I believe, from July 2, 2025. We have this hearing brief that I left with you earlier. We submitted. We had the additional copy of the Berlin Station data summary, which there's been some testimony tonight drawn from the supplemental application. That, as well as the documents that we've now denominated TCO 1 through 18, should be it for us, coupled with the testimony that you had from Jason Woodward, as well as the testimony this evening. So the only other thing I would have is some final remarks later in the evening, whenever you want to get to those. But I'll go ahead and submit those materials for you. I think that it makes it complete from our standpoint.
Is that the document you said was part of the original?
Yeah, it was, and it was used separately this evening. That's right.
So we don't need to mark it as a separate.
I don't think you do, because it's
It's part of the July 2nd package, right?
It is, and I deliberately tried to keep it clear by using the
That's
same
fine.
page references.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. As long as it's already included in the record.
Well, I understand that with me resting, we can close whenever we want. I'm not real sure in this particular context who my advocate or my opponent is. Is it a free-for-all? Is it the zoning official?
This is your application, so it's you providing evidence showing and demonstrating compliance with this other person.
That's right, that's right. And quite remarkably, all of these hearings I've come to, and by the way, for the record tonight, there isn't a single person opposing this application. Not a single resident, nobody has come out to complain. All of the other times I've come down here, nobody has come out to these hearings to complain, voice opposition, take this power on, whether under your standards or just for some other reasons. It's quite remarkable. I did understand from one of the prior occasions I was down here that the board authorized spending some money appropriated by the Board of Township Trustees, I'm assuming, to employ some other technical assistant. Is that what
It's Mr. Arcuri.
Mr. Arcuri is for? Okay. I absolutely object to him testifying in any fashion.
Okay.
The board should not, in my opinion, sit as a quasi-judicial board and enter any realm of advocacy. Statute allows the Board of Zoning Appeals to hire, again, subject to limits on money appropriated by the Board of Township Trustees. I know you authorize spending money. I'm not sure. I'm assuming the Board of Trustees authorized you to spend some money as well. But it's to employ executive, professional, technical, or other assistants. It's not to hire expert witnesses. It's not to hire somebody to take on an advocacy role or come in and testify in an adversary proceeding in any fashion. You can use the assistant as authorized by the code as far as I'm concerned, but I think it will absolutely, fundamentally affect due process and taint this entire proceeding if the board is going to venture into having a lawyer actually offer testimony from a witness. So I wanted to make that very clear for the record. I think it's completely inappropriate. Statute says you can hire assistants. You can use an assistant however you want. Get technical advice, well, what's the statute say? Executive advice, professional assistance, technical assistance, that's it. So I've said my piece on that. And so be it.
So to that point, I will ask your witness a question. If you could please me where a substantial difference.
The citing like a 25% difference, you would lose coverage based on gather more.
Okay.
That's why I asked. Actually, or anyone engaged in any propagation analysis or has any evidence to support that claim.
That'd be based on my experience. Yes.
But again,
My guess.
just for,
Yes.
you're guessing, you're speculating.
Yes.
Purchell was not guessing. Purchell submitted a report as part of the application.
Is Virgil here to testify?
Purchell's not here to testify, and he doesn't need to be here to testify. Covered that the rules of evidence don't strictly apply here. We have tendered what amounts to a sworn report from an RF technician with an accompanying document that covers every single conceivable factor of the need for this tower. It addresses the 700, 2100 megahertz, the gap, filling of the gap, the location of the need to fill the gap. It also very clearly and articulately addresses the reason for the height. It's not total speculation. The proposed tower height of 195 feet is needed to fill in the identified coverage gap and provide optimal capacity offload in the area. Tower height less than 195 feet would not fully meet Verizon's coverage objectives and would result in less coverage and lower capacity offload, and thus would frustrate the purpose underlying the project.
My question is it substantial difference from 145 feet to 199, I think you just said? What report do you have? What percentage increase? What is the difference from 145 to 199? Is it substantial?
I read, you will have this evidence for you to read however you want to interpret. I read this as clearly telling you anything low will frustrate the purpose of filling the gap. 182 feet, I don't know that there's an analysis offered here or anywhere about 10% or 12% or 15%. And that's because of the objective for the entire project. Jason Woodward told you that the hundreds of thousands of dollars that go into these projects, nobody is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with no clear objective. The objective was to fill this gap identified. And from an engineering capacity or an engineering standpoint, this height is needed to do that. There's no analysis of going smaller because it doesn't fill the gap.
ask a question in terms of the co-located antenna. I think you mentioned earlier they're typically 10 feet lower. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So if there are 4 on the tower, the lowest one would be at tower's 190, 160.
If it's a 190 Brad Center, it'd be 180, 170, 160, correct?
In your testimony, you mentioned that it's easier to go on an existing tower because of zoning.
Existing telecom.
Did Verizon do its research to see if tower code had properly zoned this tower?
That's a realistic question. I can't answer that. I can't answer
But
that.
you said it was a consideration of building your own tower versus running on a tower that's already there.
I think Carrie would probably be a better one to answer this. I believe we have legal agreements with all of our tower partners to make sure that they build sites in appropriate ways. At least that's how I would write it, but I don't have the rights.
And I would ask each of you, there's multiple ways to get to that site or to get to this building. When you enter into Berlin Township, you see the sign that welcomes you to Berlin Township. It's on every road leading into our township. If you haven't, it says clearly on their zoning enforced. So take this all the way back to when you started this project. Would hope whoever you sent to that site saw sign and knew that there's zoning enforced in this township.
Yeah, we fully appreciate that, but that's why we're here. We had some significant legal issues that were presented due to the fact that this project was on a school, a governmental property, and it was serving a governmental function. What governmental function was it serving? Giving money to the schools, money making for the schools. Schools need money or they can't function. It got a lease payment and it gets lease payments. So there was a position taken under some immunity principles that project was immune from zoning. That's the reason there was, 2.5 years of litigation, whatever it was. A determination was made to, how should I cut to the chase? End the incredible expenditure for attorney's fees, all of the other uncertainty. How much longer would it take to litigate the issue of immunity? I don't know. There didn't seem to be a utility behind doing it. So the utility was to go ahead, make the application. I've always appreciated your remarks because to some extent, let's say you're in the dark, if you will. So it's probably odd looking to you, but there wasn't just an application initially. The best I can do to try to explain that to you is that there were these legal positions taken that were litigated. They're still sitting out there, but they're not going to be necessary to spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars litigating as we invoke your jurisdiction to consider this application.
Thank you. I am going to ask Chris to have his witness go ahead and testify. I think we will help the board and gain more information on the situation and our.
Okay. Mr. Arcuri, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Reinhardt, yes. I will point out, though, that sometime you fade in and out, so if you could make sure you're close to the microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
If you want me to speak loudly, I can speak loudly.
Okay.
If you would, could you please state your name for the record and who you work for?
Yes, I'm Dominic Arcuri. I work.
Hold on a second, Mr. Arcuri. Did you participate in the swearing in earlier?
No, I did not.
Okay, we need to have you sworn in.
If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, Mr. Arcuri, if you could please state your name for the record and then who you work for and then kind of what you do as an occupation.
All right. My name is Dominic Arcuri. I am a partner with a company called Televate. We provide engineering and analysis services to public safety and commercial clients focused on wireless communications.
And as part of your work and experience, have you engaged in the analysis, siting, location of telecommunications towers?
Yes, we do. We commonly do that.
Okay. And could you give a background regarding your educational experience and your work experience related to those issues?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, a master's degree in electrical engineering from Syracuse University, and also an MBA from Duke University. I have been practicing engineer for approximately 40, 45 years, and much of that has been in, well, nearly all of that has been in wireless communications. The last 25 years has been consulting for clients regarding wireless, cellular, and public safety communication systems.
Okay. And so just so I assume you've heard most of the testimony this evening?
Yes.
Okay. So just to put so there's full disclosure for purposes of the record, you have previously participated as a designated expert witness for Berlin Township in the litigation involving both Verizon Wireless, or Tower Code 2013 and Berlin Township, correct?
I'll again object for the record. That makes my point. He's apparently an expert witness for the township, and the township is not a party to this proceeding. It should not be advocating for a position. It should not be tainting a quasi-judicial administrative proceeding.
Okay.
Go ahead.
With that objection,
Can you repeat the question, Mr. Reinhardt?
read back the question. I'm going to have the court reporter read the question. Okay. Let me just ask the question again. As part of the litigation between Berlin Township and Towerco, were you designated as an expert witness on behalf of Berlin Township in that litigation?
Yes, sir.
Did you prepare a report associated with the proposed telecommunications tower involved in both this application and in the litigation between the parties?
Yes, I did.
At any time related to any of your work related to reviewing anything associated with the litigation or the applications that have been submitted to this board, have I or any other party directed you to come to a certain conclusion or to advocate for a certain position?
No.
Were you asked to evaluate the proposed telecommunications tower on its own merits?
Yes, that's correct.
And what specifically were you requested to do?
I was requested to check the coverage for Verizon in the particular area in Berlin Township, looking at both the 700 megahertz frequency band as well as the 2100 megahertz frequency band. Also was to look for alternative towers that were in the vicinity that could potentially serve the purpose of the proposed tower. I also looked at alternative locations within the search ring and nearby, and did a coverage comparison at different antenna heights for the selected location of the tower in question.
Okay, and so with respect to your review as it relates to the height of the tower, you heard the testimony earlier this evening that Verizon did not conduct any analyses below 190 feet. Is that correct?
I did hear that, yes.
Did you conduct is it a propagation analysis?
Yes, I conducted a propagation analysis using an industry standard propagation tool, which takes into account the technology involved, the height of the structure, obviously the location of the structure, the surrounding terrain, and general physical and propagational characteristics.
And did you make any findings? What height below 190 feet did you analyze?
I also analyzed 130 feet.
And what were the results of that analysis?
I found only marginal difference in coverage in the selected area when comparing the 190 versus 130 foot heights. Only approximately 1% difference according to my analysis.
Okay, and that was that based upon information that was available to you at the time?
That's correct.
Would you be able to refine your analysis by additional data from Verizon Wireless as to capacity limitations, block call data, anything like that?
Yes, I would be able to refine it if that information was available.
Okay. But as of today's date, you have not received any of that information, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So as it relates to the location of towers, did you identify any other locations on the school property that would be sufficient for purposes of the location of a tower?
We did identify one location that was approximately 2/3 of a mile from the current location of the TowerCo site. And we felt that that tower location would have warranted additional review. We did not find any additional towers within the half-mile search ring that was proposed by Verizon.
Okay, but at no time did you advocate that the current location of the proposed tower should not be approved?
No, I did not advocate that.
Okay. And is all of these findings contained in the report that you prepared?
Yes, they are.
Give me one second. Is that a report dated April of 2023 with the heading Berlin Township, Ohio Tower Code 2015 LLC proposed tower review and analysis?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. As part of your review of these applications, did you see anything in the application materials submitted as part of the conditional use permit and variance applications that changed any of the conclusions contained in that report dated April of 2023?
I'm sorry, I wasn't totally clear on that question. Did you ask if I found it?
Did you review the conditional use permit and various applications?
Yes, I did. Additional information.
Can you say that again?
Yes, I did review the additional information.
related to the conditional use permit application submitted by Tower Gov.
Yes, that's true.
In your review of those applications, did those applications change any of your findings or conclusions in your report from April of 2020?
No, they did not.
And once again, are you advocating for or against the telecommunications tower that is currently located at 2502 Hyatt Road?
I am not advocating against the tower location.
Okay. Is your role here tonight simply to provide technical assistance to the board in understanding the questions that have been presented to the board by the applicant?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Is your role here tonight to provide technical assistance and information to the Board of Zoning Appeals related to the issues that have been presented by
Yes.
the applicant pursuant to the conditional use permit applications?
Yes, correct. That is my role.
Okay. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce a copy of Mr. Arcuri's report from April 2023, designate that BZA, I believe, Exhibit T. Or BZA Exhibit W. What's after T? U. RSTU. See, apparently that was, the alphabet is not my strong suit. And Mr. Arcuri, do you have a copy of your report for you?
Yes, I do.
Can you please direct the board to the page number where it talks about your analyses at the reduced height? And talk about the minimal discrepancy?
What page? I'm sorry.
Well, I was asking if you could direct the board to that part of your report where you're talking about the your analysis of the reduced height and the minimal discrepancy between 190 feet and 130.
Yes, that begins on, scrolling down, sorry.
Okay. Take your time.
Let's see.
I may help you if it's
It begins towards the end of page 8, the heading Berlin Station Site. It shows the results of a simulation of predicted coverage based on a height of 195 feet. And there is a diagram, figure 7, that shows that on page 9. Also on page 9 is the figure 8, which shows a predicted coverage from that same location with an antenna height of 130 feet. And both of them show the results of an area assessment of the percentage of coverage at a given level based on a sample polygon within that area was chosen, and the analysis was done to compare the amount of coverage, area coverage within that sample area for the simulation at 195 feet and then compared that to 130 feet. And the results are indicated on initially on page 8 and also on page 9.
With that, I don't have any additional questions for Mr. Arcaria. Mr. Matthews wants to.
I will restate my objection to his involvement in this quasi-judicial board beyond anything even approximating mere assistance on technical information. I appreciate that the witness has testified that he isn't advocating and doesn't have a position in opposite to the construction and deployment of this tower. But he has offered putative testimony relating to some of the features that I believe are completely inappropriate, particularly in light of it being based upon his own independent work for the township trustees. I know there are two schools of thought that you can rest on an objection and then do some thing where you say, subject to my objection. I am absolutely not going to waive my objection to his involvement in this matter by doing any cross-examination. And I'm making the record absolutely clear. I believe his involvement, the way he was called tonight, has just tainted this entire proceeding.
So I just want to make clarification for purposes of the record. So Mr. Matthews, have you seen this expert report or this connection with this report prior to tonight?
In connection with litigation of matters that are completely different than this application.
Okay.
This report was prepared before the application. The report has nothing to do with the issues that should be ripe for the jurisdiction of this board to consider under the elements for the conditional use and the two primary requests for a variance as to height and a variance as to setback from a property.
So I appreciate that you recognize this as a quasi-judicial hearing. So I just want to make sure that we're clarifying issues for the record. So you were aware of this report prior to this evening's hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't care.
So,
I'm making it very clear that his involvement
I
in
understand.
the capacity you chose to use him the way you chose, which in my view is way beyond what the statute allows, and fundamentally a violation of due process to taint this proceeding in the way that's been done. I'm not going to augment or add to that taint by handling any additional questioning. I will, out of necessity, when I close, make some remarks about his comments, but that's it.
So you were aware before.
I'm not answering any more questions about his involvement in this matter either. I've been fair, I've responded to questions, and I've been asked this same thing already, what, twice? And I was aware of his report. I was aware of his report in an entirely different context that had nothing to do with this board's jurisdiction or consideration. Period.
My only point was going to the point that the issue of propagation analysis at the tower height, maximum heights, included in the zoning resolution, were known as an issue related to this tower prior to tonight's hearing.
I don't know how many times we can keep going around. Yeah, it was known. And what does it matter? We have submitted our information and our reports documenting the engineered need based on Verizon's data for a height of 195 feet.
And to be
This assistant, or whatever he is tonight, witness, expert, or somebody who's not a party to the case, which is just totally blowing my mind, paid for apparently by the township trustees and engaged by the township trustees to be testifying today to offer the board something to decide this case on. I don't even know how to, I don't think that can be fixed. That's how tainted this proceeding is. But the bottom line is, I will argue some points about what he offered tonight, and that's where we're at.
Thank you.
So with that, as the board may recall, we asked to have certain witnesses available that are not here tonight So there are certain exhibits, basically in the form of transcripts, testimony, that has been provided by Tower Board's representatives, in various proceedings, and whatnot that, you may not have record. If we can take a 5-minute break, I'll assemble those ones that I think are relevant for the board's consideration.
I'm gonna ask the board to go into private deliberation during the break, so we will be back in 5 minutes.
the board get this document? There's 2 extras of these. When he handed them out, there's 2 pieces that he handed out. There were 2 extras of these for some reason. I just want to make sure everyone got it. This part, yeah, you guys all got it, right? Okay, just want to make sure. That's weird. There's 2 extra
Well,
copies.
that could be for the, two alternates.
For the what? Yeah, but then there's no extra copies of this.
Okay.
So I thought maybe, all right, well, just an extra copies, just like the one. Oh, Chris, do you need to mark the he handed out?
No, because that's part of,
Sorry, part?
that is, again, part of the July.
Oh, yeah. My goodness. This is above my pay grade.
Okay, we will continue. I don't have any questions for Dominic. Does anyone from the board? Yep. Thank you for your comments there, and Chris, back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I apologize. So for purpose of the record, I just wanted to introduce, since we did ask certain witnesses to be present and covered certain things that have been discussed, but were discussed in more detail in various depositions and hearings. I want to introduce, to the extent that Jim wants to object, I can object, but I wanted to introduce the testimony of Virgil Yavis from the preliminary injunction hearing in front of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Ohio as it relates to the telecommunications tower issue and the analysis that he performed related to that. Since he's not here tonight, that's one of the things I wanted to make sure we included, because it goes into detail about the process and procedure he went through.
No objection.
We'll call that one BZA. Here we go again. B.
Yes.
And I apologize, I only have one copy of this, but Jim, I think I'll show it to you.
Not a problem.
But I'll. Where is this? You said they introduced it this evening. Again, we talked about the lease. I believe Mr. Caldini testified in the same hearing regarding the lease amendment, reasons for it. I don't know if you have any objection. Printed out his portion where he testified.
No.
So we'll call that one exhibit BZAW. And again, just have one copy of it. I was going to introduce Jeff Gordon's, his deposition transcript from November 1st of 2022, because he went through in some detail about the process for identifying how they got to the location they're at.
The only thing I'm gonna say for the record is, I'm tired of being a broken record, it's not being a broken record, but this is a BZA proceeding, and I don't know that I've ever been in a predicament of having the BZA introducing things for itself. Ordinarily, it's a quasi judicial proceeding, there's an advocate that comes in with a position. There may be people from the public who oppose, there may be some other form of opposition. If somebody has standing, they can come in and they can object. I just am not aware of where a BZA is building its own record or augmenting its own record. I truly believe that it's taking on an advocacy role through a lawyer by doing that. It's just odd to me.
Your objection is noted.
And I will argue that it's inappropriate, but over the particular documents that you're submitting, do I have an objection over the substance over the form? No. If you're offering the testimony.
So I just want to ask and make clear for the record, you recall that I asked that we have Mr. Gordon available? Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
And
He wasn't available.
you said you would make arrangements to have him made available. Correct.
And there was an effort.
And he's not here.
He's not here. And some opponent with standing to oppose us could have called that person, could have asked the board to issue a subpoena. I don't think the board should have.
That, Mr. Matthews, I'm simply suggesting that the questions that I was going to ask that you probably don't have direct knowledge of,
Go ahead.
I'm suggesting that we just simply introduce the deposition transcript where these questions were asked.
Yeah, the board can take these things under advisement if it wants. I've made my point about
So with that again,
the interesting advocacy position that I am 100% against, because I think it's fundamentally unfair and it's tainted literally the entire proceeding. I don't like my time being wasted, and I'm sure you don't like your time being wasted.
okay, so with that, designate Mr. Gordon's deposition transcript from November 1st, 2022 as BZA Exhibit X. This one I actually did have copies of. So. And finally, I have Dwayne Matlack's deposition transcript, where, again, covered the issues talking about building permit, issues associated with that, designate that BZA, exhibit BZA Y. And unfortunately, again, I don't have a copy of it, so the ones that we have no copy of it, was done perusing those, we just need to get those back. What's that? Yeah, if you'd like.
If you want me to, I can record it.
Yes, if you can do that. So it would be,
All of them except Gordon's.
correct. So it should be,
Two below, two that are
so it should be Catalini, Virgil Yabas, and then, Mr. Matlack.
I got Catalini,
Mr. Yabas,
I got W and B.
yeah, and then I think Mr. Matlack maybe at the end. You, why?
Why?
Yeah, so if you make. And that's all I have. For purposes of my question. So, if you guys have any questioning.
Thank you.
So, the board has heard a lot of information tonight.
Mr. Chairman, are you closing? Because I thought that at some point there'd be a public comment. Portion of the
We'll
hearing.
get to that in just a moment. So, again, I would ask that the board keep in mind that we're hearing an area variance and the Duncan versus Middlefield items are what we should be considering as we move closer to a decision. And then we also are hearing a conditional use. Keep those items in your mind for helping us make a decision on the conditional use as well. I will ask for any public comments.
Thank you. Do I need to be sworn in or?
Yes, are you a Berlin Township resident?
I'm not.
You would be here on behalf of who?
Of T-Mobile.
And does T-Mobile, well, go ahead and stand up and state your name.
Okay. My name is Derek McGrew, 103 Wilshire Court, Hubblesville, Indiana. I'm here representing T-Mobile. I was here a couple months ago and,
Excuse me, have you been sworn in yet?
oh, I'm sorry.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirmation the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You got it?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would ask that you keep any of your testimony to this applicant. So I'm curious how you're being with T-Mobile, you're not filing with this application.
Well, T-Mobile's been mentioned several times tonight, so I would think it'd be applicable, right? I was here a couple months ago and I said something I want to reiterate, that T-Mobile agrees with Verizon. Actually, T-Mobile thinks the tower is too short as it is, that they would prefer it to be taller. If for any reason the available height that they've applied for, T-Mobile actually has a lease to use that tower. And if that height is reduced, I'm not the decision maker, so I can't say this, but I've been doing this 26 years. And I can tell you that if the height is reduced significantly, T-Mobile will have a need for another tower. So I'm just making you aware of that we're at 179 feet right now, and anything less than that, we would have to do a reanalysis to determine whether or not that tower would serve our needs. Also wanted to mention that we, for this particular tower, applied for permits for zoning approval, back on 10/10/24. And under section 764(9) of the Spectrum Act, the township has 60 days to provide those permits. So at this time, it's our belief that the township is in violation of that Spectrum Act. And also just wanted to point out, if you guys hadn't thought about it, Verizon is providing service there right now. There are 3 schools in proximity to this tower. And if there were an emergency at one of those schools, the kids with T-Mobile service, we can't guarantee they're gonna have service there right now. That's the reason we need the site there. We need the site there like Verizon needed the site there, because there's no other towers in the area. Our search ring, I never compared the search rings, but I'm sure they were similar because the existing sites are in the same direction for both of us. We're probably using the same structures. And so that's what creates a search ring. And our search ring, this tower is in our search ring, and we need it to provide service to the schools and the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask the applicant whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without a variance.
Here's the best way to address a couple of quick things. I made these comments before about Duncan. And for this record, in case I need to actually litigate it again, Duncan factors I know are routinely applied at the township level, but they really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm asking you, I've asked a question.
And I understand, and I'm gonna make my record. Duncan factors shouldn't be applied here. The Duncan case involved an application of some law involving municipalities. Some courts of appeals in Ohio have gotten it right. Some courts of appeals in Ohio have gotten it wrong. And eventually that needs to be litigated.
I don't want to hear your.
I know you don't want to hear my case.
I want you to answer the question. I've given you plenty of time earlier tonight.
Yeah.
I gave you plenty of time with your witness that you brought up. You objected to a witness that we had that talked for 5 minutes. You had probably an hour of time. So I'm just asking you.
Yeah, and just for the record, you're interrupting me and not allowing me to make a record, so that's okay. I want that to be on the record, that I'm being interrupted so that I can't state a position as a lawyer for my client on the record so that a court can review
I'm not
that.
asking
And
about
at that, I'll rest on
I'm
that.
not asking about your thoughts on Duncan versus Middlefield.
Yeah, because you don't want to hear my thoughts about my case.
I don't. I do not want to
That's
hear your
correct.
thoughts about it.
And I'm glad that you've now made that comment on the record, that you as the board chair don't care about my
I
comments.
did not say I don't care about it. What I said is, our zoning code gives us an outline to follow for making a decision on a case.
Yeah, and again,
that is-
you're not going
that is
to.
right here in our zoning code.
It may be in your zoning code, but you have to understand that this involves the deployment of a telecommunications tower, which has certain benefits and protections under federal law. I'm also not going to give you a speech, but I'm going to make a little bit of a record. That federal law generally trumps, if you will, is supreme to conflicting Ohio law. You may not like it, people may not like it, it is what it is. But the Federal Telecommunications Act is the standard that needs to be applied here. There is a small safe harbor carve-out in the Telecommunications Act for local zoning. But fundamentally, the core principle is that local zoning cannot, I'll just get the terms out for you, materially inhibit. Materially inhibit. It is my view that trying to mechanically apply the Duncan factors to materially inhibit the deployment of this tower would be unfair. The other important feature about Duncan factors that the courts have made clear, the Duncan factors aren't exclusive, so it's not like there's some magic to them. They were just judicially created. And they're also not to be weighted. You could satisfy one of the Duncan factors, and in your case, be permitted to have the variance. You may have a different fact pattern where you don't meet any of them whatsoever, but because they're not exclusive or exhaustive, it doesn't mean anything. Now, I will do my best if you want to walk through them to take my position on it.
If you're going to answer the question, I would ask you to do that. You were here, you filed an application in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right.
We're the board selected by the township to hear this case for Board of Zoning Appeals. This is the outline that we had to follow. You can keep lecturing us about whether we should use it or not, but you filed an application in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we have to use some measure to help us make a decision on this case. If you would like to answer the question.
And I will. My lectures are intended.
If you don't, then we will stop.
My lectures are intended to try my best to fairly educate. It's not intended as a lecture. There are other places I could be, other places you could be.
I sat and listened to you and your witness for an hour and a half.
Okay.
And I'm trying to ask a question now, and I'm getting a lecture from you about we should not be using Duncan versus Middlefield.
Okay, I've made my peace. Go ahead through the Duncan factors.
So I have a question that I've asked you.
Okay. Can this property for this purpose be utilized without the variance? No, because the state of the record is absolutely clear that this telecommunications company needs the tower to fill a gap, and it needs a tower at that height to fill the gap.
Whether the variance is substantial.
It is not substantial. I would address that in this fashion. And it's not to lecture, it's to look at things rhetorically though. What's 145 feet in the code for? It's just arbitrary, it's just picked. It doesn't serve any engineering or other standpoint. It's just 145 feet. It is engineering principles that dictates how tall the tower needs to be. Is it a substantial thing to allow an adjustment to accomplish a need that a telecommunications provider needs over 145 feet that's just arbitrary? My position is no, that is not substantial.
Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties or the comprehensive plan for the community would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
Yeah, absolutely no adverse impact whatsoever. In fact, the property, we all know, while zoned under a farm residential classification, is really institutional. It's got schools on it. It's an institutional use. I would submit to you that from a planning perspective, it is far better to try and push these tower uses to institutional use properties than residential use properties. You would not want to push the towers out into the residential areas. I would think you would prefer to have a tower built on an institutional use. And I think the thing that speaks volume to that point is when you open it to public comment, there is no one in the audience to complain about this tower.
And the previous hearings, we've had people in the audience.
Not in the BZA hearings. You've had a couple of people in the audience.
You're incorrect. We've had.
And they were in favor of the tower. They told me they were in favor of the tower.
Was that on the record?
I don't think it was on the record because you never got to the record, that portion of the record.
Next question, whether the variance would adversely affect delivery of governmental services.
None whatsoever. In fact, it will enhance the delivery of governmental
Whether the
services.
property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction.
I can only assume that the school board, when it took possession, knew there was zoning out here.
Whether the owner's predicament can feasibly be alleviated through some method other than a variance.
No, the mechanism to adjust a provision in a zoning code is a variance.
Whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting a variance.
And our view is that it would be entirely appropriate to allow a variance.
I got the board for questions to the applicant on the area variance.
If the height in the zoning code was an arbitrary, you said 145, why would you not want to give us the reasoning to validate that your 190 is needed, that there's too many calls being dropped at 145?
You do have it. I mean, you have the justice.
You said that you didn't even look at it at 145. You didn't even test it at 145. So why was that not proven to us that there was a number of calls dropped at 145? Why was it that there was not, you're saying it needs to be used for the 911 because of the 3 schools in the area? There's no proof that's been provided from your client for that information.
Yeah, and respectfully, the reason is because of the logic that the carrier goes through. And I thought we did our best with both witnesses to explain this. There is a gap in coverage assessed. If there's a gap in coverage, then the way to fill that substantial gap in coverage is the project. It's not a, well, what if we tried 130, or what if we did 140, or what if we did 150? It's to engineer to that project. So that's why it's addressed in that fashion and not the way you're looking at it. I appreciate where you're coming from, that it doesn't have the step-by-step analysis in here, but what it has is they identified the significant gap in coverage, looked for other alternatives, found none that were going to fill that gap in coverage, and engineered what tower would fill that gap in coverage, and that's where the 195 comes in.
Now, is that for the high-speed internet that they're trying to replace that Verizon brought up?
That is for actually all purposes that, again, I appreciate the question so that we can clarify. It's actually not just a singular feature. It's first and foremost, maybe, if you want me to put it in a radiated scale, to fill the gap in coverage. That's the reason primarily for building the new macro site and deploying an antenna on it. It, however, does other things. It adds to the capacity. So you've got the gap in coverage, so it fills the gap in coverage. As explained, it also adds the capacity to handle more load. That's another thing the tower does. And we have remarkable evidence in the record. This tower is being used by your residents and by your visitors and businesses and the schools. It's a terrific amount of transmission that's going through here. To your point, though, that it also enhances, if you will, to another service, which is the home internet. And it's a remarkable 50,000 megabytes of download volume in that area that's added by having this tower. So it does more than one thing, principally designed to fill the gap in coverage, also adds to the capacity, also allows for the expansion of new technologies and services. We're going up to 6G, I think the testimony was, the next generation of technology, and also the data capacity to handle offering to residents the home internet.
Okay. So I think Verizon was asked to provide us with the number of drop calls in the area. Was that provided to us?
No.
The only place it might be is in Purgil's testimony in the federal court. I don't think he does an analysis of dropped calls through here in terms of supplying his raw data. He does it in terms of explaining what is the problem, what is the gap in coverage, what is the 700 megahertz issue, what is the 2100 megahertz issue, what is the predicament encountered by not having adequate coverage and capacity, call blocking, cell splitting, and band hopping. So he explains it, but he doesn't go into the exact, like 1 out of every 10 calls is dropped or something. He just explains how that predicament is encountered because of the lack of capacity and coverage.
Okay. Did you provide us with any customer complaints? The number of percentage customer complaints that you get daily for prior to that tower being in place?
I don't think that detail is in here either. I don't think that detail was in his testimony. I just recall maybe some general discussion about it. But I don't think at the federal court hearing he even had that raw data. I just don't think that's here.
So I can clarify that a little bit. There is no information in that regard that has been submitted as part of these applications. As part of these applications, Mr. Kaler, zoning inspector previously, did send communication to the applicant and his counsel requesting copies of data supporting the essential need for the tower that's being requested in the form of data related to block calls and whatnot. And Mr. Matthews submitted a response. That is the July 2nd, 2025 correspondence supplying the supplemental material. And I'm just going to quote what he said. In addition, although the application may be required to demonstrate why it is essential to service to the extent the township demands specific types of data, for example, drop call data, it exceeds the code requirement. So, that was the response that was given.
Okay. And then with the number of the zoning, and you said that you felt that you were in immunity, but your zoning department at Tellerco also couldn't even fill out the application and provide us with the correct amount, so this could be heard months ago.
There was some confusion about the check or amount that was delivered? Yes. So what, it's cured?
Well, but I mean, you're bringing up that, that you went through all of this detail, you erected and you're using currently because you were you had immunity. But why would you go through when you've been, Towerco was notified from the township that it's not approved and that there was an issue? Why did we get this far? Is that the kind of business that Towerco does?
Yeah, I'm not real sure how to answer that except to give you the facts and not throw, characterizations into it. As I stand here right now, it remains my position that a school property doing anything that is school related, doesn't mean teaching, it may mean making money to have funds available to teach kids. Because that is a separate political subdivision, it is perfectly legitimate for it to take the position it is immune from local zoning. Immunity is not absolute even under Ohio's definition of immunity. There still has to be some analysis of, can you meet any of the provisions that you're contesting in the code and still perform your functions? That analysis was done and the conclusion was made that we can't succeed to fill the gap with a 145-foot tower. Can't succeed with a tower that's placed the height of the tower plus 25% from a property line. So when the determination was made you can't do those things, then the decision was made that it was immune. I thought that was largely, whatever the case may be, water under the bridge, water over the dam, because we did invoke your jurisdiction to consider the conditional use issues and the variances. I appreciate you have questions about it, but I don't think we can really get into all those details and fully explain why that position was taken. It was asserted and it was litigated, and the decision was made to go this route.
So, I have a
But for
question.
purposes of the record, I would love to make clear, part of the litigation, that's why I was asking you whether you were asserting immunities, because that, even though it's on hold in the litigation, Towerco is still asserting the claim of you. That's why I was asking for clarification, these purposes of this proceeding.
Yes, that is still out there. That is absolutely right. We also know that we need a final decision in order to go to federal court and address matters if need be.
Correct.
So we need to get there.
I understand.
Just, I have a question. As I understand it, there's two pieces of the need, right? It's the coverage and capacity that you've outlined during the testimony. Through the course of the testimony, from what I can ascertain, at the various heights, the coverage is potentially there, capacity is in question, it seems like. And
I think the distinction drawn in Hertel's report particularly would be the capacity at the 2100 megahertz, as you lower it.
And my understanding though is there's not a clear understanding of what that degradation and capacity.
That's a fair way to articulate it. I don't disagree with that. But the only thing I would add, and again, I've been accused of preaching, it's not my intent to preach. It's more of an intent, for whatever it's worth, to teach. The analytics here should be, has the company identified its threshold? I don't know that the company is also required to dispel every other conceivable option. It is required to dispel or point to, they looked for other alternative sites and couldn't find one. I believe the record supports that. But I don't think it's an obligation under the TCA for the company to actually say, well, we did our math and we could deal with the lower height. It seems counterintuitive to me, and that's why I'm trying to use that way of expressing that you've articulated the question right, But the reason that that information isn't there is because the company engineers to what its need is, not to those other potential alternatives.
And just a question, there's 2 antenna right now, so if there were 4, the one that's at the lowest, 160, I'm assuming the capacity on that antenna would be less than ones that are higher? I'm trying to understand from a.
Yeah, I mean, typically your coverage decreases as you go lower, correct?
For Verizon, in their towers that you have across the state, what is the average height of those? Or even the ones that are pointed out in the documentation you provided?
The adjacent sites are roughly the 190. I think one is 217, it's a colo. Most of them are 190 of the adjacent sites, rad center. I always go by rad center, not tower height, so
That's where you put your.
that's where I put my antennas, that's radiation center.
And where are those towers located?
If you look in the tower code 034. This one. You guys have it?
It's page 2 of that.
Correct. They are the white circles with the black dot, are existing Verizon cells.
Is it on Cheshire Road? Sorry.
That one on Cheshire Road, is that the one that's on top of the water tower?
Water tower.
Looks like it, there's my railroad tracks.
It's on the others.
321988.
No, that's a tower.
That's what,
That's a communications tower.
but, so I noticed that one has been put up in the last couple of years. That's not in our township, it's just across the line. What is the chances of just moving your radios over that?
But we still have a need.
Well, I know I mean, you're talking, it's less than half a mile from where you are now, probably a quarter of a mile.
So you want us to move our existing?
No, I'm just
No,
asking.
no, I'm asking. I don't.
I'm not saying you need to move it there, I'm just saying, I know you spent the money here, but that antenna has not been there as long as this macro cell tower has. So why did you guys build one there when you had one a half a mile away or less? Just curious. This one is so important. Was it planning on this being torn down or something? I mean.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have the history of
Okay.
that site. Sorry.
I didn't know if it was a Verizon one or not until I saw this paperwork here. Now it is. And they're very close together. That's why I talk about how important this is. And then there's one just outside your search ring. And again, I don't believe that was here in 2022 either. I think that has been built since then. You don't know the answer, it's fine.
Any other questions on the area variance? I'll ask the board if there's questions on the conditional use variance.
Was there a question on the setback, in terms of the amount of setback?
Yes, that is the question.
So what is the amount of the setback that's being requested? Just in the
I believe, without looking at the details, the setback is somewhere around 45 feet, 40 to 45 feet. The code would have technically required the height of the tower plus 25%. And our position on that is, again, not to belabor it to death, but it's a unique circumstance, it's co-owned property, it's all, I think it's either 140, 144 feet, contiguous owned by the schools. An artificial line in this particular instance. And that placement is more important to accommodate the school functions and the school development ongoing, as opposed to moving it such a substantial amount.
Was that looked at the time of building? Was there room to move it? Whatever number of feet you needed to be off that property line?
Oh, I don't know, but I can tell you that the location, once it was picked by the school board, was the one that everybody wanted to go with. And I would have to understand, they know that that's not in compliance with the tower height plus 25%.
So the school board picked a location.
Yeah, for all those other features that I just generally spoke to, that all their future growth and expansion and development.
Were they aware of the conditional use situation they were going to be in, that they're setbacks?
Don't know that, but it might be in the testimony you were offering.
One thing I was gonna add, did we ever ask whether they evaluated whether they would have parcels or right? Did you think about that?
And that could be
I
done.
mean, I know it's a technical
It
issue.
just seems to be something that would really elevate form over substance, just to eliminate the
I'm
line.
just curious, I can't remember if we've ever done that testimony or not.
Don't recall it.
I would ask if the applicant has any additional comments for the board.
Not much, because I don't want to belabor you. It's unfortunate that things like this get adversarial. I fully appreciate you're doing a role for the township. I'm not giving that lip service. I may have mentioned to you before. I did my time, 24 years as a township trustee, a lot of thankless work in that. I had the privilege to represent townships and other communities for, I believe, going on 40 years now. I understand you get placed in predicaments. And so there are some natural advocacy and adversarial posturing. I don't like them, but that just happens. But I wanted to air that and just get it out of the way. With all due respect to the analysis of this particular matter, I think I would implore you to take a step back and look at the totality of the circumstances. We do have the backdrop of federal law that you have to at least consider. I have suggested that it largely trumps Duncan factors or other little state law issues. You can draw your own conclusions on that, but it's my position that it really is the Telecommunications Act we should all be focusing on. So the focus under that, as well as the jurisprudence that's been developed under the TCA and the jurisprudence that's developing under the TCA, leads me to the final remarks as follows. Number one, the principal issue should be geared toward, does the record support that a conclusion was reached that there was a significant gap in coverage and that the way to fill that gap is with the deployment of a 195-foot tower at this location? I submit to you, under any reasonable analysis of the record in front of you, that's the only inescapable conclusion. There can be speculation offered that, well, maybe 130 feet will work, or maybe something else. Verizon has its data. Verizon used its data. Verizon used a professional earlier to come up with the project here and has submitted the testimony of another professional tonight about the need for the tower. And I submit to you, it's inescapable that Verizon needed the tower. There was a search ring identified, very standard in the process. There were other options looked at. There was no other tower to place it on. There was no other tall structure to utilize. That's why the decision was made to go with the capital expense of a new macro site. That involves its own expenditure of money, finding a site, not easy. It's easy to speculate that, well, maybe there's another site somewhere else within the circuit. It would have required something beyond speculation that you could ever get a lease there. And I do submit that the best way to fill this identified gap in coverage was to look to an institutional use parcel, and a school is a perfect location for that. The other thing about the filling of the gap, it's funny, we hear the technical components of it. How RF works generally, what is a gap, how you're trying to push out coverage so that you enhance your services, how that increases the capacity, how that offers the opportunity for other services and so on. Those are all the cute technical things that are in the record for you. But there's also a fact that you know well beyond what I know, but I can tell from my own eyes. You have a growing community. Beautiful residential neighborhoods. And it's, from all appearances, doing very well. And you're to be congratulated for that. But from a telecommunications standpoint, that drives the need. Those people are going to demand cell service. They're going to demand the best cell service. They're going to demand all the data services that are available, gaming and all the other things that are expanding. Do I really need to mention the infamous streaming service that is the primary way TV is supplied any longer? These are all things that drive the need for towers to be built. And I don't want to get into another argument about the fact that there haven't been gangbuster room full of people complaining. I think the reason that there haven't been gangbusters of room full of people
Can you
complaining.
go ahead and conclude your comments, please? I don't need you to go back into residents showing up or not showing up here.
Okay.
We're really,
Well,
I think you can tell that the questions from the board revolve around the height of the tower here. You're not addressing that. That's what you're applying for.
Okay, well, if you need me to focus, and again, it's a little bit off-putting. So for the record, I'll state that it's a little bit off-putting. I'm not trying to be belligerent, but it's off-putting when an advocate who's trained to advocate for things and is employed to advocate for things is basically being told not to advocate anymore. So that's okay. I'll stop because I'm being told not to advocate anymore. But it's not.
No, I've asked you not to go to a point of trying to tell us that none of our residents showed up. When the residents within 300 feet are the ones that need to be notified of the hearing, and there are very few residents with 300 feet
There's
that tower that have been notified about tonight's hearing.
There's no way to make a different record. I came here with my eyes. There were no residents in opposition. It's the record.
We're going to make our decisions based on the height of that tower. That is what your variance request is for. It's not about how many residents show up. It's not about streaming services and all of the other.
It absolutely is
technology
about
we
all
discussed.
It absolutely is all about that because
It's about the height of the tower.
If
That's what we have to make.
If you
our
were to
decisions.
prohibit the tower, it would materially inhibit this federally licensed provider from providing those services to customers. That's fundamental to a violation of
I'm
the
not sitting
PCA.
here as a federal official. I'm here as a board of zoning appeal, looking at our township zoning code that tells us what cell towers can be built for. You filed an application in front of the board, and that's what we're hearing your testimony tonight. So I would ask that you stay focused on that requirement.
Okay, because I will interpret that as I'm being asked to only comment about the height of the tower. The only evidence in the record is that 195 feet is required to fill the gap in coverage and provide the enhancement of coverage and capacity, period. No obligation to explain to you, well, why can't we just get away with 130 or 40 or 50, 60? The need is demonstrated by the report. And the report is authenticated by the expert. The height is absolutely fundamentally necessary. Anything shorter, I know you don't want to hear what the federal law requires, but anything shorter would materially inhibit this provider from supplying the services to its customers, which in my mind is a violation of the Telecommunications Act. So I implore you to give some consideration to that act and allow the tower to be supported with a conditional use permit that authorizes it on this farm residential site, allows it at this height, and also allows it to provide for the co-location of a total of up to at least 3 antenna, and allows for it to remain where it's at regardless of the setback requirement.
And, you know, I don't know, you know, people, you mentioned nothing will. I don't know whatever you wanted to make.
Yeah, I submitted it.
Okay,
Board's
I didn't
consideration.
that. I said away. Sometimes I don't know if it's-
Well, I was in the process of doing what I usually do, which is advocate, and I'm given a fair opportunity to do that. I would have gone into the fact that developing jurisprudence under the Telecommunications Act is more than simply looking at gaps in coverage and filling gaps in coverage. It's actually looking more expansively at that. That you can materially inhibit a provider if you do nothing more than stop a provider from providing augmented and new technology. That's in the brief, it's submitted, you can do whatever you want with it, I would submit that we would go a long way to ending this problem in Saga if the relief we asked for were to be
Was
granted.
there an extra copy?
I thought I had 7 copies.
Okay, make sure I get a copy, because I didn't see it.
Oh, this one,
Whatever.
Just a couple pages.
Yeah, where it was.
because there was not enough of this one, but you handed this out to us, right?
Yeah, it's a document, titled 20 Law Support of the Application.
That's it.
Does he have
I just had one quick question, just in your closing comment. You said 3 antenna, did you want 3 or 4, total of 4? I just want.
Well, there was the detail about the application discrepancy and the earlier engineering. To the extent that you need to reconcile, if you will, that C1 and the C3 provision, I cannot make up engineering data tonight and say, well, 4 is perfect. I can't do that, so I'm not going to. If you want to reconcile it, I believe the best way to do would say confine it to the 3 antenna for the authority. If later some data wants to be submitted to change that, I would have others fuss with that. I can't make anything up. So the technical data supports the 3, the 4 was a request.
Thank you.
Chris, any additional questions?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, do you have all the case citations in this? If you can send those to me, email me.
I think
For sure.
the principle, as I'm calling it, the developing jurisprudence on the TCA is largely based upon that white deer, is it?
Yeah, there's a right here township case, right, I just didn't see a case citation.
I don't know if it's been published yet.
That's okay. I mean, if you have a copy of the opinion, you can send it to me.
Yeah, it was recommended by the Third Circuit as precedential. I'm assuming that's published.
Okay.
The copy I have doesn't have like a third site on it. That's why that references the case number.
Where is that? Just, so it's the Third Circuit.
Yeah, Third Circuit, 22-2392.
22, 2392.
And the key
And
feature,
it's White Deer Township.
key feature in that case is the very, I would say thorough analysis of jurisprudence to date, consideration of the positions of the Federal Communications Act. And
Is that
conclude-
where all of these points of law
Yep.
are coming from?
Yep.
That case.
And that the material inhibit standard of both provisions of the TCA not only does insufficiency of coverage ordinarily entitle a provider to a variance, but so does insufficiency in network capacity, 5G services, or new technology. Because telecommunication interests of constitutions are statewide, national, and international. So local zoning boards, like the White Deer zoning board, are prohibited from preventing providers from meeting those broader interests. That's the reason that's happening.
Thank you.
As directed by the zoning code, the Board of Zoning Appeals, after hearing the case, will, within a reasonable period of time after the public hearing, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve, disapprove, or approve with supplemental conditions. I would state that tonight, it's almost 11 o'clock, going to require some discussion on this application, and that the board will meet at a later date to make our final determination on our decision. I thank the applicant for coming tonight, and as a board, we need to pick a date and time in the very near future to have this discussion and reach a decision. I would ask, check your availability. My first date I would throw out would be Sunday, December 28th at noon. I'm just gonna ask the zoning clerk and the board and the court reporter if you would be available for that time and date.
I am, not sure. Are you, is everyone else available? Is everyone else available Sunday?
What's that?
Is everybody else available Sunday?
I am.
Let me just check. Hold on.
Otherwise, I think we need to move to Monday.
I can do Sunday.
I can do Sunday at noon.
Sunday at noon. That work for everyone?
Sure. The board gets down to the court reporter.
If that's better than Monday, then we can do something.
Okay, so Sunday, December 28th at noon. We'll hold a BZA meeting for discussion and decision on application BZA 25-002 and BZA 25-003.
And Mr. Chairman, I just to make it clear for purposes of the record, you need to close the hearing, evidentiary portion of the hearing.
Do I have a motion to close the evidence portion of the hearing?
I make a motion to close the evidentiary.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mrs. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Markin,
Yes.
Mr. Sutton.
Yes. Thank you for coming in tonight.
And then a motion to continue
Motion to continue.
for the,
The other items on our agenda for tonight, I don't think we should proceed with.
It's just
So we'll do that at our
organizational stuff. Yeah.
I make a motion to continue
We'll do that on Sunday.
Sunday. And then also include the organizational meeting components in that meeting.
So Sunday, the 28th at
Noon.
and at Berlin Country Hall.
Also supposed to make sure there's nothing.
No, I don't.
All right, there's nothing there?
I checked earlier, there's
Okay.
on Sunday.
Okay, was that Jason? And then did anyone second it?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Markin,
Yes.
and Mr. Sutton.
Yes. Call tonight, BZA meeting to close. And
Somebody knows how to turn off our